She was mocked, ignored, and invisible her whole life, until a single secret gave her beauty. But one drop of water changed everything. Her beauty was gone, and what she gained was far more powerful. Chey did not look back as she crossed the last boundary of the village. The morning air was cool, but her body felt heavy, as if every step carried the weight of the life she was leaving behind. The laughter, the whispers, the sudden silence when she passed. She carried all of it with her, packed tightly inside her chest. Her clothes were simple again. Her face was bare, untouched by magic. And yet, something had changed. The illusion was gone. No more careful movements around water. No more fear hiding behind smiles. No more borrowed beauty demanding constant obedience. Her feet moved slowly along the red earth path, dust rising with each step. Villagers stood at a distance, watching her leave. Some faces showed judgment. Some showed discomfort. Others looked away completely, as if her truth was too difficult to face. No one stopped her. No one apologized. And strangely, she no longer waited for them to. Was this what freedom feels like? Her shoulders ached, her eyes burned, and her body was tired in a way sleep could not fix. She had lost everything people said mattered: status, admiration, security. But beneath the exhaustion, there was a quiet calm, unfamiliar yet real. The kind of calm that comes when pretending finally ends. I don't have to hide anymore. That thought settled into her heart like a soft exhale after years of holding her breath. As the village faded behind her, memories rose without permission. The girl she had been, mocked, ignored, invisible. The woman she had become, desired, praised, feared. And now the truth of who she was, standing alone, unchanged but finally honest. She realized something painful and powerful at the same time. Both versions had suffered, but only one had been free. The road ahead was uncertain. She did not know where she would sleep that night, or who would offer her work, or how long it would take to rebuild a life from nothing. But for the first time, her future was not balanced on a rule she could accidentally break. It was hers to carry, hers to shape. A breeze passed through the trees, brushing her face gently. She did not flinch. She did not panic. She simply closed her eyes for a moment and felt it. There was no magic left to protect. No illusion to maintain. Only skin, breath, and truth. Chey straightened her back and continued walking. Behind her, the village kept its secrets and its regrets. Ahead of her, the world waited. Not with promises of beauty, but with the quiet challenge of survival. And somehow that felt enough. Because when the illusion shattered, something stronger remained. The town Chey arrived in did not know her name. It was smaller than the village she had left, quieter, with narrow paths and low houses that leaned into each other as if sharing secrets. No one stared when she passed. No one whispered. No one measured her worth with their eyes. To the people here, she was simply another woman looking for work, another pair of hands, another quiet face among many. At first, the silence felt strange. She woke before sunrise and joined others in their daily labor. She swept courtyards, carried water, washed clothes, and helped sell vegetables in the market. The work was heavy, and her hands grew rough again, but the tiredness was clean. Each coin she earned came honestly, without deception or fear. She ate simple food, plain grains, cooked greens, and slept on a thin mat in a small room she rented near the edge of town. At night, when darkness settled and the world slowed, Chey lay still and listened to her own breathing. There was no rule echoing in her mind. No sudden panic at the sound of water. Rain could fall freely now. Tears could come when they wished. For the first time in a long while, she slept without fear. Is it possible to feel safe without being admired? The days passed quietly, one after another. No celebration marked her presence. No praise followed her steps. And yet, something inside her softened. She began to notice small things: the warmth of sunlight on her arms, the steady rhythm of work, the comfort of routine. Life no longer demanded that she perform. It only asked that she show up. I am enough even like this. That thought came gently, without force, and stayed. Sometimes, She caught her reflection in a bucket of water or a dark window. She saw the same face she had always known, lined by hardship, shaped by endurance. But now it did not hurt to look. There was no comparison to make, no magic to mourn. She met her own eyes and did not turn away. The people of the town began to recognize her in small ways. A shopkeeper saved her a little extra food. A neighbor greeted her each morning. Children smiled at her without fear or mockery. No one praised her beauty. They thanked her for her help, trusted her with their work, and relied on her steady presence. And in that quiet acceptance, Chey felt something she had never known before. Peace. Not the loud kind that demands attention. Not the fragile kind built on illusion. But a deep, steady peace that grows when life is honest and the heart is no longer divided. She realized that being unseen did not mean being unworthy. It meant being free to exist without judgment. As she walked home one evening under a darkening sky, Chey smiled to herself. Not because anyone was watching, but because she finally could. Pain does not announce when it begins to change a person. For Chey, it happened quietly, in moments so ordinary they almost went unnoticed. In the steady rhythm of her work. In the weight of buckets lifted day after day. In the long evenings when her body ached, but her spirit did not collapse. Life had taken much from her, dignity, trust, illusion, but it had not taken her will to stand. She began to understand this one morning as she watched her hands move with practiced ease. These hands had been laughed at, used, and dismissed. They had given money to a man who betrayed her. They had once trembled under the fear of losing borrowed beauty. And now they worked without fear, without hesitation. She was still standing. Humiliation had bent her, but it had not broken her. Betrayal had scarred her, but it had not erased her. Loss had emptied her, but it had not ended her. Each wound had left behind something stronger than pain, endurance. What kind of strength grows without applause? Chey no longer measured herself in reflections. Mirrors had once held too much power over her heart. Now she passed them without pause. Her confidence did not come from smooth skin or admiring eyes. It came from knowing she could survive hunger, loneliness, and disappointment, and wake up the next day ready to continue. I have already lived through my worst days. That truth settled deep within her, firm and unshakable. When difficult moments came, and they did, she faced them differently. A harsh word did not crush her spirit. A long day did not steal her hope. She had learned that pain, when endured honestly, does not weaken a person. It teaches them where their strength lives. Others began to sense this change in her. Not because she spoke louder or demanded respect, but because she carried herself with quiet certainty. Her steps were steady, her voice calm. She listened more than she spoke, and when she spoke, people paid attention. Strength, she learned, does not need to prove itself. At night, when she lay down to rest, memories still visited her. The laughter, the betrayal, the night everything fell apart. But they no longer ruled her heart. They were chapters, not her whole story. She could acknowledge them without being pulled back into their pain. Chey understood now that suffering had not been pointless. It had shaped her into someone grounded, someone whole. She did not need to be admired to feel valuable. She did not need magic to feel powerful. She had survived. And in surviving, she had become unbreakable. Respect does not always arrive loudly. For Chey, it came in small, almost invisible moments. A neighbor trusting her with a set of keys. A shopkeeper asking her to watch the stall for a moment. A tired mother handing her a child without worry. These were not grand gestures, but they carried something Chey had never known before: belief. She did not ask for attention. She did not tell her story. She simply showed up, every day the same way. When someone needed help lifting a load, she stepped forward. When food was short, she shared what little she had. When words were harsh, she answered with calm silence. Her kindness was steady, not performative, and people began to notice. Why do we only recognize true value when it asks for nothing? Chey worked harder than most, not to prove herself, but because responsibility had become part of who she was. She remembered how it felt to be overlooked, and she refused to pass that pain on to others. If someone struggled, she helped. If someone failed, she did not mock them. She had learned what cruelty could do, and she chose a different way. This is who I am when no one is watching. That thought gave her quiet pride. Slowly, her name began to carry meaning in the town. Not whispered with curiosity, but spoken with trust. Ask Chey, people said. She will help. Children waited for her after work, walking beside her, sharing small stories. Elderly women nodded in greeting, their eyes warm with respect. No one commented on her face. No one measured her worth by her appearance. And for the first time, Chey felt seen without being examined. She realized something important. Admiration fades quickly, but respect grows roots. The praise she once received for borrowed beauty had been loud and empty. This recognition was soft, but it stayed. It followed her into the quiet hours, into her sleep, into the way she stood taller without realizing it. There were moments when she remembered her past life. The sudden attention, the shallow smiles, the way people changed when her beauty vanished. But those memories no longer hurt the same way. They felt distant, like echoes from another world. This life, built on honesty, did not disappear when circumstances changed. One evening, as Chey sat outside her room watching the sky darken, she felt something settle gently inside her chest. She was valued, not for how she looked, not for what she could give, but for the steadiness of her heart. And that kind of worth did not require protection. She smiled quietly, knowing she had found something rare. The news traveled slowly at first, like a quiet wind bending the branches of the trees. Then it gained momentum, carried by travelers, merchants, and whispers along the narrow village paths. Chey, the woman they had once scorned, was living differently. Not in luxury, not as someone who relied on borrowed beauty, but honestly, steadily, and with a dignity that seemed unshakable. The villagers could hardly believe it. The women who had whispered behind her back, once sure of their superiority, now found themselves pausing in awkward silence when her name came up. The men who had laughed and mocked now shifted uncomfortably, caught between curiosity and shame. Children who had once pointed fingers no longer dared to speak ill, sensing a quiet power they could not understand. How can someone so ordinary appear so extraordinary? The stories came in fragments. Chey rose with the sun, worked hard, and slept without fear. She shared what she had, offered help without expectation, and carried herself with a steadiness that made the village gossips uncomfortable. There were no loud declarations, no signs of vanity, just quiet strength, and an integrity that could not be bought or stolen. They never understood what strength looked like until it walked away from them. People began to murmur, not with admiration, but with a gnawing awareness of their own cruelty. We judged too quickly, one woman whispered to another, her voice tinged with regret. We thought her age, her face, her quiet ways meant less, but we were wrong. The elders who had once turned a blind eye felt the weight of their own approval of mockery. The laughter they had once deemed harmless now seemed cruel and petty. And somewhere deep in the village, a small, uncomfortable truth settled. They had underestimated her. They had measured worth with shallow tools, beauty, youth, a fleeting smile, and failed to see what mattered most. Chey's absence had taught them a lesson they could not ignore. She had not returned seeking revenge. She had not flaunted her former beauty or wealth. She simply lived, and in living well, she exposed the hollowness of their judgment. The quiet dignity of her new life held a mirror to their mistakes. Was it possible to feel regret without hope of amends? For some, it sparked humility. For others, shame burned quietly in the chest, a sting without words. And for the children, who observed more than they understood, it planted seeds of empathy, a reminder that cruelty never truly vanishes without consequences. Chey's story, now carried on the wind, reminded them all. Character matters more than appearances, and integrity outlasts envy. She had lost the magic that once blinded the world to her, yet gained something far more enduring: self-respect, strength, and a life lived honestly. The letters arrived slowly, carried by travelers and messengers who knew nothing of their significance. Each one bore the same message. Apologies, invitations, pleas for return. The villagers, once proud and mocking, now bowed in words, offering what they could not give before. Recognition, acceptance, even admiration. They wanted Chey back, hoping to erase the shame they had brought upon themselves. Chey held the first letter in her hands, the paper trembling slightly as she read. The words were polite, almost desperate, but they carried no magic. No guarantees of loyalty or love. Just human regret, and a chance for her to step back into a world that had hurt her. Could I really go back? Her heart fluttered, caught between old wounds and the strange allure of belonging once more. Walking back would mean facing the very eyes that had mocked her, that had whispered cruel judgments about her age, her face, her silence. Walking back could mean reclaiming a sense of place, but at what cost? Her freedom, her peace, the quiet dignity she had built from the ashes of betrayal. I am not the same woman they remember. For hours she sat in the small room she had made hers, staring out at the dusty path that led to the village. She could hear the wind whispering through the trees, carrying fragments of her past. A laugh, a pointed finger, a smile that had once cut deeper than knives. And yet, there was also the laughter of children in her new town, the quiet nods of neighbors who saw her for who she truly was, and the simple rhythm of a life lived without pretense. The village offered apologies, but could they offer understanding? Could they offer the years she had lost to mockery and judgment? Chey weighed each thought, each memory, each ache that had become part of her strength. She realized something crucial. The power was no longer in their hands. It had always been in hers. She imagined stepping back, welcomed with smiles and gifts, parades of recognition. She imagined the satisfaction of revenge, showing them what they had lost. She imagined forgiveness, a gift to those who had wronged her, and perhaps a balm for her own heart. But she also imagined walking away, turning her back completely, letting their shame remain theirs, and carrying forward the quiet life she had begun to love. Which choice would define me? Chey finally folded the letter and set it aside. The answers were not in their pleas, but in the life she wanted to live. The magic of beauty was gone, but the power of choice remained. And for the first time, she realized that real strength was not in changing how others saw her. It was in choosing for herself without fear, without obligation, and without needing approval. She stood, shoulders straight, eyes clear. The path to the village was visible, but so was the path forward, away from judgment, toward honesty, peace, and freedom. She took a deep breath, feeling the sun on her face and the wind against her skin. Whatever lay ahead, the decision would belong entirely to her. Chey walked along the familiar path to her old village, each step steady, deliberate, and free of hesitation. The red dust swirled around her feet as the wind carried the faint scent of the market and the distant sound of children laughing. Sounds she had once dreaded. Now, they were no longer weapons aimed at her heart, but reminders of what she had endured and overcome. When she reached the village center, a hush fell over the crowd. Eyes that had once mocked, pointed, and whispered now widened in surprise. They recognized her, but she was no longer the same person they thought they knew. Her face bore no borrowed beauty, yet there was a calm radiance in her posture, a quiet confidence that unsettled even the boldest among them. Why does honesty carry so much weight? Chey's gaze swept across the square, stopping for a brief moment on the faces of those who had laughed at her, who had whispered that she would never be chosen, never matter. She did not speak yet. She did not lower herself to plead or to justify. She had no need. Every look she gave, every step she took, spoke of endurance, dignity, and self-respect. I am here to close the door, not to open it again. She finally addressed them, her voice calm, even, and unwavering. I have returned, not for forgiveness, and not to seek approval. I have returned to speak the truth, to leave behind what no longer serves me, and to remind you that the person you once thought small carries strength you will never take away. Whispers ran through the crowd. Some shifted uneasily. Others lowered their heads. For the first time, Chey realized that power was not in beauty, nor in loud words or displays of anger. It was in the quiet, unshakable knowledge of who she had become. Someone unbreakable, someone free. She continued, her voice soft yet resolute. I have learned that life is not about being seen by everyone, but about living with honesty, courage, and heart. You may have laughed at me, judged me, or ignored me, but your approval is not mine to seek. I leave with peace, not resentment. The crowd remained silent, the weight of her words pressing into the corners of the village square. Those who had once mocked her felt an unfamiliar discomfort. Their judgments laid bare, their cruelty exposed, and their understanding of respect challenged by someone they had underestimated. Chey turned slowly, each step away deliberate. She did not hurry. She did not look back to see who would follow or bow. Her presence was a statement in itself. Strength and freedom do not require validation. They require only truth and courage. As she disappeared down the path, leaving the village behind once more, the silence remained. A quiet acknowledgement that Chey had transcended the smallness of judgment and cruelty, claiming a life defined not by others, but by herself. Chey stepped onto the dusty path once more, the village behind her quiet, almost reverent in its stillness. This time, she walked not with fear, not with shame, but with clarity. She understood something she had never grasped before. Power is not given by beauty, wealth, or approval. It is claimed from within. Every step she took was a choice, deliberate, leaving behind the echoes of judgment and the weight of borrowed admiration. Why did it take so long to see what I always carried? I do not need their praise. I need only my own peace. The villagers watched as she moved with calm assurance. Some faces still bore surprise, others shame. But Chey's gaze never wavered. She did not seek to provoke, to punish, or to explain. Her presence alone spoke louder than any apology they could offer or recognition they could give. She had learned that self-respect is untouchable. It cannot be stolen by whispers, ridicule, or even time. The red earth crunched beneath her feet, a steady rhythm echoing the steadiness she had forged within herself. She remembered the borrowed beauty, the powder, the fear, and the fleeting applause that had once defined her. And she smiled softly, not with vanity, but with understanding. The magic had given her nothing permanent, but the journey had given her everything: strength, patience, endurance, and above all, the ability to face life on her own terms. She paused at the edge of the village, looking back one last time. The rooftops glimmered under the morning sun. The market stalls bustled, and children's laughter rang faintly in the distance. She felt no longing, no bitterness. The village had its stories, its judgments, its lessons, but they no longer dictated her path. She was free to walk away, not running, but choosing. Her mind drifted briefly to those who had mocked her, the ones who had judged her worth by appearances alone. Would they understand? She wondered, that true power is quiet, invisible, and unassailable? Perhaps not. And that is their loss, not mine. As she moved further along the path, she felt the air differently. The sun on her back, the wind in her hair, the certainty in her chest. They were hers entirely. No mirror could measure it. No compliment could enhance it. This power could not be borrowed, bought, or stolen. It was the product of endurance, honesty, and unwavering courage. She entered a new town, unknown and unassuming, where her past mattered little. Here she could work, live, and sleep without fear or calculation. She carried no magic, no pretense, no borrowed admiration, only herself. And for the first time in years, she felt whole. Chey knew that life would still bring challenges, hardships, and moments of doubt. But now, she faced them armed with the knowledge that her worth and her strength could never be taken from her. She had lost illusions, but she had gained the invincible power of truth, self-respect, and peace. Chey rose with the dawn, not hurried, not anxious, but steady, each movement deliberate, each breath a quiet affirmation of self. She had left behind the village, the borrowed admiration, and the magic that once defined her. Now, She walked through her small home and the surrounding fields with a sense of calm she had never known. There were no mirrors to measure her worth, no whispers to validate her presence. Her value was internal, undeniable, complete. Can a person finally feel whole without anyone noticing? I am enough just as I am. By the stream near her new home, Chey knelt, letting her fingers ripple through the cool water. She gazed at her reflection, unadorned, real, and entirely hers. The face staring back held every story. The pain of mockery, the betrayal that had cut deep, the fleeting beauty that had come and gone. And yet, it was not her appearance that made her smile. It was the courage she had cultivated, the honesty she had embraced, and the serenity she had earned. The air smelled of earth and life. The wind moved through the trees with a gentle insistence, and birds called freely from the branches. Chey breathed in the simplicity of it all. Life was still hard. There were chores, labor, moments of fatigue, but every challenge felt manageable, rooted in a freedom she had claimed for herself. She could work, eat, rest, and reflect without fear, without pretense, without hiding. She remembered the old powder, the promise of beauty, the danger that had come with it. Those days felt like a distant storm. What they had given her was temporary, but what she had built on the other side, resilience, self-respect, and peace, was permanent. She could look at herself in water, in mirrors, in the eyes of others, and see not just a woman who had endured, but a woman who had been reborn through honesty and courage. Children in the nearby village sometimes passed by, curious and playful, yet Chey no longer sought their attention. Men and women went about their lives, indifferent to her appearance. And in this quiet indifference, she found validation stronger than any praise. She was complete, independent, unshakable. Her worth no longer depended on reflection or admiration. It existed because she had chosen it, protected it, and claimed it fully. As the sun climbed higher, Chey walked along the path leading to the fields she tended, the baskets of vegetables resting on her arm, her steps unhurried and confident. She hummed softly to herself, the melody a private celebration of survival, of wisdom, and of self-possession. Every challenge that had once weighed her down now felt like a teacher, each lesson etched into her being, each scar a reminder of strength. She paused at the water again, watching the ripples spread, and smiled. Not for anyone else, not for recognition, not for magic. She smiled for herself. In that moment, Chey understood fully. Beauty fades, applause ends, admiration can vanish in a single day, but wholeness, self-respect,